Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Davis. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for Fear Free. Thank you for joining us for Maximizing Your Personal and Professional Value. Presenting today is the founder of Higher Power Consulting, Paul Diaz. If you have any questions during the webinar, please be sure to enter them in the Q&A box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We're so excited to have Paul here with us tonight. So on that note, Paul, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I appreciate you giving me a little bit of your time, and that right there is going to be a common theme of this webinar: your time and the value of your time. So now that I've set that stage, let me just go ahead and dive in. A little bit about myself. I am a former Marine Corps veteran, and like Jessica said, the founder of Higher Power Consulting. I started this company late last year after about 2.5 years as the vice president of DVM recruiting for one of our country's biggest veterinary medical groups. I've spent easily over 20 years in the recruiting industry. Very different companies, different industries, but all recruiting leadership roles. So I've seen it all from, kind of high volume retail type positions all the way through human health and obviously veterinary medicine doctors. So there's not much about the recruiting industry that I haven't done. So if you guys have any questions at the very end, or if you're thinking of questions throughout this webinar, please write them down and be sure to submit them so I can get those answered for you tonight, okay? That's my company email address, my phone number, and my LinkedIn profile. If you have a LinkedIn, please feel free to connect with me, and we can have follow-up discussions there if you'd like, all right? So tonight we are going to cover a few different topics. First of all is your time and the value of your time, okay? I'm going to talk to you about how the traditional hiring process is geared in a way that can potentially put a lot of your time at risk. I'm going to talk about a simple technique to maximize your income potential. We'll talk about the differences between a recruiter and a talent advocate. All right, some people think it's semantics, but I'll explain to you why it isn't. The power in numbers and how to best utilize it. I'll describe what that means later on. We'll talk about a quick opportunity for all of you to earn extra money as student representatives. And then, of course, some closing remarks, and we'll have that period of time for the question and answers, all right? So, jumping right in, I'm going to do this webinar a little differently than some of the other ones that I've run, where we'll go through several different slides and just a lot of text on every page. Instead, what I wanted to do is try to capture your attention through stories, okay? So I'm going to utilize some stories to provide examples of the points that I'm trying to convey. And I chose this picture that you're looking at specifically because of what it represents to me and what it means to me. And when I look at this picture, it represents each one of you, okay? This person right here on your screen could be any one of you, okay? And what you're seeing is somebody with their fingers crossed, eyes closed, big smile on her face. And what this tells me is that she probably just finished an interview, okay? And she is hoping that she is going to get that result, that expected result, that great offer at the very end. And she's got her fingers wound up nice and tight, and she's waiting for that phone call. Like I said, that could be any one of you going through the traditional hiring process, okay? Now, that's my first point. I feel that as veterinary professionals, you all deserve to be treated better than what the traditional recruiting process has to offer. And you have to understand, this is coming from a place of 20+ years of experience. So I've seen how this process works. I know the ins and outs of it. And when I started my own company, I knew that I wanted to do something better. Okay, I wanted to do something better primarily for the veterinary professionals, because that was where my last corporate role was. Okay, and that's where I felt a strong connection, right? I felt a strong connection to the veterinarians primarily because I'm a huge animal lover myself, okay? So it was the first time that I had an opportunity to combine my professional passion, which is leading recruiting teams, and my personal passion, which is animals. Okay. So when I started that company, again, I started thinking, I said, well, look, these doctors, these technicians, these veterinary professionals, they deserve to be treated better through this process. All right. So I needed to come up with a way to do that. And I think I did a pretty good job of it. And we'll discuss it a little bit later. But what I want to do is tell you a story about the traditional hiring process and what I mean by you deserve better. Okay. So we're going to talk about let's call her a hypothetical candidate named let's give her a name, Dr. Jennifer Smith, Jen Smith. Okay. She is in her last year of veterinary school. All right, so the pressure is on. Okay, she's a little bit worried because all of her classes are now online. They've moved from the in-person on campus to online, so there's a little more stress. It's a change for her, something that she hadn't anticipated. It is her last year, so she's heavily focused on studying, and obviously she wants to do the very best she can and pass that NABLE the first time. But there's a new added pressure in that last year, all right? And we all know what that is. It's finding that job, right? And finding that job is going to be critically important for us because we know that once we leave school, we need to start earning money to pay back some of that student debt that many of us have collected, right? And Jen, just typical vet student, she's going to leave. She calculated her student debt, and she's anticipating she's going to leave with about $150,000, all right? Which from what I'm hearing is about average. Okay. Now, in that last year, Jen is going to get inundated with phone calls from recruiters, right? Everybody wants to talk to her, all right? And that feels flattering, right? It's really exciting, all right? This is going to be the next stage in my progression, but it's also somewhat distracting, right? Primarily because, hey, your time in this last year is very limited. Your time is a commodity, it's a precious commodity that you do not want to waste, okay? And being inundated with these calls and having to deal with voicemails and calling people back, all of that stuff takes time. One day, Jen's phone rings and she thinks she recognizes the number, so she picks it up. And it's a recruiter, right? It's a recruiter representing one of, let's just say, one of the corporate practices, all right? And it's a very experienced recruiter, right? With the very engaging voice, and they're saying all the right things that Jen wants to hear. And, they start talking about locations, and Jen says, oh, I'm interested in, let's say, Chicago, or somewhere in Illinois. Oh, we've got several positions in Chicago, all right? And then that big question comes, right? It's about compensation. And the recruiter says, well, Jen, what are you looking to earn in this first role out of school? And Jen remembers from listening to my webinar late last year, that that's a question we don't answer, okay? That's one of the recruiter trick questions that you as a candidate want to avoid, all right? And I'll tell you why here in a second. So Jen remembers that I gave that advice previously, and she doesn't answer the question directly. Instead, she spins it and says, well, why don't you tell me how you value your position? What value do you place on this job, right? Because Jen remembers that I told her and the rest of that audience, every vacant position has a value to its company. So instead of Jen telling the recruiter what she wants to make, she's now asking the recruiter, how does your company value this position? Because with that number, Jen can determine whether there's an alignment, okay? Well, when she says that, the recruiter immediately flag goes up, and the recruiter's like, okay, this person knows what they're doing, right? So you get the typical answer, which is a range. And I'm sure if any of you have spoken to any recruiters yet, you've probably had that discussion about the compensation range, right? And they're going to say, let's say something like, hey, Jennifer, the range for this position is going to be, it's 85 to 115,000, all right? Now, everybody on this webinar just heard me say 85 to 115, but Jen, as the candidate, as the person looking for that job, all she heard was 115, okay? In her mind, she believes $115,000 is achievable, okay? And that is exciting to her. That would be a great starting pay for a new grad right out of school, right? So now her interest is piqued, okay? So what happens next is a commitment to a series of phone calls, all right? Whether it's, have a conversation with our medical director, now have a conversation with our operations director, one with our practice manager, whomever, okay? There's gonna be a series of phone calls set up. These are called the screening calls. Now, if you're thinking about kind of this picture I'm drawing for you, all of this interaction takes a lot of time, okay? A lot of time from Jennifer. So she's doing these phone calls and everybody seems to really like her. So now we get to the interview stage, okay? And whether it's in person, right? Some people are starting to do some in-person interviews, or it may still be virtual, maybe a combination of both. Who knows, right? It really depends on the organization that you're engaged with. Let's say it's an in-person interview for the sake of this example. So now let's go back to that compensation discussion. Jennifer heard 115,000, okay? So she's going into this saying, I've got to perform, because if I perform, I can get 115,000. So what is Jennifer doing right now? She is putting this pressure on herself to perform, okay? She is telling herself now, if I go in there and if I dress right and I use the correct words and I answer every question perfectly, I'm gonna get $115,000. And what happens when we do that, when we put that pressure on ourselves, okay? I'll tell you what happens because I've seen it hundreds of times. You fail to recognize signals. You fail to recognize hints and clues about the environment which you are now considering, okay? Because in your head, all you're thinking about is how you are going to perform. You're trying to do everything so perfectly to get that 115, to get that highest offer, okay? And what ends up happening is you fail to notice the disorganization in the back end or in the back rooms of the hospital. Supplies are all over the place, people running around, nobody really talking professionally to each other, right? You miss those clues, right, about the environment. Hey, that old piece of equipment in the back, what is that? Oh, that's our ultrasound machine, whatever the case is. But these are the things that you tend to see through rose-colored lenses when you apply that pressure to yourself in this process, all right? You get through this, then you're gonna go home and you're going to look just like this woman on this screen right now. Fingers crossed, eyes closed, waiting for that call, all right? And then the call comes and they say, Jen, we've got a great offer for you. We're so excited. You did great. Everybody who met you loved you, and we're excited to have you as part of the team. We're offering you $85,000. And Jen's fingers, they're not so tightly wound anymore. As a matter of fact, she let them go. Her eyes open up, and she starts realizing, whoa, wait a second, the range was 85 to 115. So does that mean I did that horribly? Well, no, it doesn't mean you did horribly. It means they knew they were going to pay you 85 from the start, okay? Every position has a value. Every vacant position has a value to its company. They know these numbers going in. You don't, but they do, okay? And that is why they will normally ask up front, what are you looking to earn? Remember when I said that earlier? What are you looking to earn in your next role? What would make you happy? How much would you like to make? However they want to say it, it's all about getting you to say that number. Because if their budget to fill this position was $100,000, but you answer that question and you say, oh, I would really like to earn 90, I'd like to start out at 90. Well, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get 90. You may get 85, but you're not going to get the 100, right? So that's the reason why recruiters will ask that question, because rule number one of negotiations, whoever says a number first loses, all right? So if they get you to set that stage, they get you to say that number, now they know what the scale is, and they'll be able to adjust their numbers to make it appear as if they met your needs, all right? So in that story, that describes the traditional hiring process where you are going to engage with these recruiters who represent these companies, okay? They are going to attempt to get some information out of you about your compensation expectations, all right? They are going to run you through a lengthy process, all right? It could take, well, you know, some people can do it quickly, right? Some people, it'll take months. Regardless of how long it takes in total, it is going to take up your personal time, time that you're not going to get back and time that is extremely valuable to you, okay? And the worst part about the process is that you are going into it with good faith up front for an unknown outcome. Think about that. I mean, if anybody thinks I'm wrong, please let me know at the very end. But you're getting into this process with an unknown outcome. You don't know exactly what's going to come out at the end. You don't know exactly what that number is going to be, all right? So in a little later in this webinar, I'm going to explain to you a better way that provides you with an option, okay? But again, your time is valuable, and that is the crux of this webinar. It's a commodity that you're never going to get back, so just do what you can to protect it and don't waste it, okay? Now, in regards to this next comment up here, supply and demand equals value. This is something that I talk to veterinarians about quite regularly. You are entering a profession that is in extremely high demand in our country right now. Extremely high demand, okay? You're entering a profession that is very admirable, very respectable, okay, and in demand. That demand thereby drives what you would expect that demand to drive value, right? So for example, if I was a widget maker and I sold my widget for $5 and I realized, whoa, my first month, I'm fresh out of widgets, everybody bought it up. The demand is high. Well then, maybe my next batch of widgets, I'm gonna price at $10. And those go really fast. Then I keep raising that price until I find that balance point between the market demand and my supply. And now I know the true value of my product. As veterinarians, I'm pretty sure all of you know that there are more jobs available right now for veterinarians than there are veterinarians to fill those jobs. So the demand is much higher than the supply, okay? Which would lead me to believe that the value of the veterinarian should be going up. And I'm seeing it creep up a little bit, but it's not creeping up at the rate that I would have expected, okay? But the reason I'm telling you this is because I need all of you to realize exactly how valuable your credentials are. Whether you're a VMD, a DVM, veterinary professionals across the board are in demand, and that demand should equate to value, okay? So what you need to do when you recognize that is don't sell your value, don't give up your value for pennies on the dollar, okay? Understand the value that you bring to this, well, to this country, to the market, to the employer, all right? And feel comfortable asking those types of questions like, you know, how much am I generating and how much am I actually earning, right? You should be able to have those questions after, you know, a year or two, after you get a year or two of experience in, right? Even as a new grad, okay, you still have a tremendous amount of value because at the end of the day, the work that you do is what generates the revenue to keep the lights on for your company, okay? Whether you go to work for a corporation or you work for a private practice, they earn their money off of the work that you do, okay? So granted, all of us, generally speaking, need a job, right? But the unique part about veterinarians is that the employer needs you more, okay? Because, I mean, technically speaking, you can get a job anywhere doing anything if you wanted to. You could go anywhere, right? But the employers, they can't keep their lights on unless you choose them, okay? So remember that. And when you have, when you know that and you recognize that, it's a little easier to have those conversations, and it's a little easier to have some confidence behind the words that you use in those conversations, okay? So the candidates that I represent and that I try to help find new jobs, I encourage them, I empower them with this type of knowledge, and I help them negotiate those best offers, okay? And like I said, we will talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. Before I get there, though, I wanted to talk about the flexibility, how flexibility can increase your earning potential. All right. And what I mean by that is I find a lot of candidates who don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of geographic location. Okay, so they'll reach out to me kind of to represent their interests, but they'll say something like, you know, Paul, I only want to work in Miami, or I only want to work in New York, Chicago, San Diego, whatever. Okay, so it's only one specific place that they're looking for work. And although, I mean, that in and of itself presents a challenge, right? Because you know, we don't have many options, so it's a very a narrow path that I kind of need to follow to find this position. Doesn't make it impossible, but what it does do is it limits earning potential, because now the possibilities that I can present are only for one specific market that is going to pay a specific rate and no more. And that rate may be okay with you, but if it isn't, then we're going to have even more challenges, okay? I want to tell you a little bit about a client that I recently engaged with, okay? This gentleman owns a practice in Yuma, Arizona. If any of you know Yuma, it is not a place where I, for one, would want to live, okay? At least not for an extended period of time. So when he called me and he said that he needed help finding doctors for his hospital in Yuma, I was about to hang up on him, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to find anybody for Yuma. Until he told me that new grads that he had hired last year are earning about $250,000 at his hospital. And I had to ask him twice to repeat that number, because I was absolutely confident he misspoke. But no, $250,000 is the average general practice doctor compensation at his hospital. And I asked again, I said, so even a new grad? And he said, even a new grad, okay? And this is for full-time work, obviously. He's got folks that only work half a month that are earning about, you know, $160,000, $170,000 for 10, 11 days, okay? He also provides free housing. He provides a free usage of a vehicle. He provides a vehicle while they're there, because a lot of his doctors travel in, right? So they don't live there. They fly in, they'll do 2-3 weeks, whatever, and then they go home. And then they come back. Now, he does have a contingent of doctors that have relocated and live there, right? For a period, you know, they'll stay there for however many years they need to, and then they'll move on, okay? But here's the thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is because that ability to take a job like that is really going to increase your earning potential. It's those diamonds in the rough that you need to find if you're looking to earn, you know, to maximize your earning potential. Okay, if that's a priority for you, then finding those diamonds in the rough are going to be the easiest way to do it. Okay, so those positions that are in rural locations that are very difficult to fill, those are generally the ones that pay very, very well. Okay, now let me break this down for you really quick. Okay, if you were to get a $95,000 base pay offer for a metropolitan area, a popular metropolitan area, okay, let's say your tax bracket, and folks, I'm not giving tax advice, that is not what I do. This is just a hypothetical scenario. So, but let's say your tax bracket, 25%, all right? So your take home for the year is gonna be around $71,000. We do some average deductions, let's say something like six grand for deductions, benefits, 401k, stuff like that. It's probably more, but I'm just using round numbers. That brings you to about $65,000, right, that you now have in your pocket at the end of the year. And let's say from that, you pay an average of about $10,000 a year in student debt payments, okay? So that leaves you at the end of the year, $55,000 for everyday living expenses, right? Your rent, food, and all that other good stuff, and about 15 years to pay off your student debt, okay? Now, let's say we went to work in Yuma, Arizona, and we're earning $250,000. Another hypothetical, let's say that tax bracket jumped up to 40%, which I think that's aggressively high, but for the sake of this, we'll use it. So now that leaves you with $150,000 in your pocket. Let's go ahead and do $10,000 of deductions instead of the six. That leaves you with $140,000 in your pocket. Now, let's say you got aggressive and you put $50,000 a year towards your student debt. That still leaves you with $90,000 in your pocket. So in your pocket, you're $5,000 less than the base pay offer in that metropolitan area, okay, before taxes. You got $90,000 in your pocket, all right? Best part in that scenario, that $150,000 student debt is paid off in about 3 years. And then after 3 years, you now have a good amount of experience under your belt, all right? And now every door across the country opens for you. So let's say you sacrificed those first few years out of school to work in a location that wasn't ideal. It wasn't your first pick. Heck, it may not even be your second or third pick, right? It's a very rural location. Go to Alaska, something like that, right? But you're earning an amount of money that you're not going to get in those popular metro areas. And you're going to get a significant amount of experience because you're most likely going to be the community hero, right? Everybody in those small rural communities, they know they're veterinarians, right? You're going to become that one community hero. So everybody's going to know you when you go to the grocery store and stuff like that. But your debt's going to get paid off. You're going to get some really good experience. And then 3 years later, you're going to be completely free of that debt burden and able to go where you want and have a good nest egg of money versus struggling your first 5, 10, maybe even 15 years until that debt burden's paid off, okay? So that flexibility really can have a significant impact on your earning potential, okay? So again, that's not a strategy for everybody, right? Some folks have families, some folks have reasons they need to be in a specific area, they've got other people relying on, whatever the case may be. And I get that, I respect that, of course. But if you have the ability, if you have the flexibility to go essentially anywhere, consider those options, all right? Consider those options so that you can get that, a great level of experience right up front. You can earn a significant amount of money to alleviate those debt burdens. And then once that's done, decide where you really want to be. Now let's go to San Diego. Now let's go to Miami. Right now I've got the experience. I'm going to walk into one of these hospitals. Not going to be a problem. Okay. So that flexibility provides many, many opportunities for you. And if anybody needs some additional insight into that, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about it, okay? So this next topic is the differences between recruiters and talent advocates. And you may be saying, what the heck's a talent advocate? Because you may not have ever heard that term before. The reason you haven't heard that term before is probably because I made it up last year, all right? So when I created that process that I'm about to tell you about, I also created a different job title for my team because I recognized the fact that being recruiters was counterintuitive to what I wanted to do. And here's what I mean by that. And you got to understand, recruiting is my industry. So this is not intended to be derogatory. This is just factual, okay? When you engage a corporation's recruiters, a company's recruiter, okay? Well, let's say you engage a company directly, all right? What you need to understand is that those recruiters are responsible for looking out for their company. They are looking out for the best interests of their company, okay? What I mean by that, back to that first example, if they have a $100,000 budget to fill this job and they convince you to take it for 90, well, they're gonna celebrate that win. They just saved their company $10,000. High fives all around, okay? Now, talent advocates, which is what my team does, we look out for the best interests of our talent, okay? And how we do that, that is where the process comes into play. So I explained the traditional recruiting process where you're going to give up a lot of your personal time for an unknown outcome. If that offer at the very end doesn't align with the value you place on yourself or what you're trying to achieve and you end up declining that offer, you don't get that time back. It was all wasted. You have to do that again and again and again, different interviews, different companies, until you find an offer that you like. And if it takes you 3-4 times, that's a lot of time wasted. The process I established, though, we start with the offer for our candidates, the candidates that we represent, okay? And how it works is through the use of profiles, okay? So I've created what I call an employer and a candidate profile. You, as the veterinarians, you would be completing the candidate profile. And in this candidate profile, it asks you questions for what you're looking to achieve in your next role, okay? So yes, I'm asking you for your compensation expectations. And you may say, well, Paul, you just told me not to answer that question. And you're right. I would not answer that question directly to the hiring organization. I am not the hiring organization. I represent you, okay? The number and the information that you give me stays confidentially with me. I do not disclose that. I do not advertise it, okay? My job then becomes to find an employer willing to give you as close to what you're asking, if not more, okay? That is my job. So I engage clients who are willing to give that offer to you up front, okay? So they're gonna fill out a very similar profile. They're gonna put in how they value their position. I match those profiles up. I match yours with theirs based on geographic location first. And then I look at the numbers. And generally the numbers don't align right off the bat, but I know what my client, you, the candidate, is looking for. I know what the hospital, the employer, is willing to pay. So I get on the phone with them and I handle those negotiations for you. Because you've already told me what you're looking for. My job is to come back with an offer that is close to, if not more, okay? So I handle that negotiation, and then I'm gonna come back to you and I'm gonna say, hey, Dr. Jen Smith, I've got an offer from you from ABC Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, and here are the numbers. They're gonna offer $95,000 base pay, 20% productivity, $5,000 sign-on bonus, $2,500 for CE, and 32 hours off for CE time, 2 weeks vacation. What do you think about that? And Jen's gonna say, wow, you know what, that's a great offer for that area. I'd absolutely be willing to engage in their process for that, okay? And that is essentially what we're doing. We're telling you up front, before you spend any time in their process, we're telling you up front what that offer is going to be. So now you can decide whether it is worth your time. And think about this as students in your last year of school, okay? When you're trying to cram all this studying in, right? And now you've got recruiters calling you nonstop, asking you to do interviews in all these different places, okay? For unknown outcomes, you don't know the end. Versus working with somebody or working with the higher power team and us saying, hey, candidate, you've got an offer from this hospital, that hospital, and this other hospital. Here are all the numbers. Which one do you like? And you get to now decide who you give your time to, okay? Better than just that though, let's talk about the experience, okay? Because now that pressure to perform, remember Jen's pressure that she put on herself to get that 115? Well, that's gone. That pressure no longer exists. Now Jen walks into that hospital and she's much more relaxed. Why? Because she knows the end result. So now this interview is solely about fit. Do I like them? Do they like me? Do they have the right equipment and the right environment? Do I have the right skills? If so, let's shake hands and get started because I already know what I'm getting paid. Now Jen notices, oh, look at the stock room's a little in a disarray, right? But hey, you know what? These folks are really nice. Look, everybody's talking to me. Everybody's making eye contact. They brought me coffee, right? So you start noticing those little things because that pressure to perform is gone. And why is it gone? Because we already know the outcome. All right. It is a much more transparent way of engaging employers for a job search, for a job opportunity. And I created this process specifically with veterinarians in mind. Okay, because I saw what all of you were going through. I saw how difficult it was to engage with new grads who I knew needed a job, but yet were trying to divide their time diligently between school and finding that job, right? Because there's only so many hours in a day, and you all have to be smart with how you spend it. So I wanted to come up with a way that would acknowledge, number one, the value of your personal time, right? But number two, give you options for engaging employers and finding jobs in a better fashion, okay? And I've been utilizing that process this entire year, and it's proven to be relatively successful. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the veterinarians that have gone through it already, okay? So moving on to this next bullet here, the power in numbers. Now this goes back to that whole supply and demand discussion that we had just there, or the information that I provided regarding supply and demand a few minutes ago. Imagine this. Imagine, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of you from one school get together and you all decide, hey, you know what? We listened to Paul's webinar the other day and we want to try this out. We want to see how he can help us maximize our earnings. So between the 4 of us, we're going to go to Paul and say, look, we would like you to try to find all of us a position, and we want to earn no less than $90,000. Okay. Now, in order to do that, we need to understand a few things. Number one is that you are going to get, if not already, you will be inundated with calls from, like I said, those recruiters, right? Everybody wants a piece of you, okay? So granted, if somebody else outside of that circle offers you 95, I would never tell you not to take it. Go for it. If they offered you 100, absolutely, right? My job isn't to prevent you from taking good opportunities, right? My job is to help you. Even if it was a job that I didn't find, I'm going to help you get it anyway. But let's say that group sticks tight. They stick to their guns. They're like, nope, all of us are going to earn this, and this is how we're going to do it. All right, great. Now they've organized a small team, okay? So what should happen in that is when those calls start coming in, they tell those individuals who are contacting them, hey, you know what? Contact Paul at Higher Power, and you can engage with me through there. Because, number one, I don't want to waste my time in the traditional process, right? You're not going to tell me the end result today, right? Now, if they do, I'd be surprised, but I'm willing to bet they don't, right? So this group, these 4 or 5 individuals from the school, they've decided, hey, I'm going to focus on my studies. I'm going to let Paul do the work for me. He's going to come back with the offers. I'll say yes or no. When I find one I like, then and only then will I go through that process, okay? Now imagine if an entire graduating class did that. Imagine if an entire graduating class on a specific region of the country did it. Imagine if every graduating class for every vet school in the US did it. Let's go back to the supply and demand question. How does that value start to increase now, right? When the students organize and they say, hey, you know what? We know how valuable we are. We know that, you know, this $9 billion, $10 multi-billion-dollar corporation, we know you can afford to pay us more, right? But that only happens when the mass is organized, right? And yes, that is a very challenging and difficult thing to do, but on a small scale, it can happen, all right? And that is something else that you can utilize this offer first process to accomplish, all right? So for student rep opportunities, I know several, most of you probably have heard of this. You may have been offered this type of role. For the most part, what I'm seeing out there is people getting, I don't know, somewhere between $1,000, maybe $1,250, up to like $1,500 for their school year. And what they're doing is a lot of administrative work for the company that's paying them, right? So you're going to organize meetings, you're going to reserve conference rooms, you're going to, or probably set up Zoom meetings now since, nothing's happening on location, or at least it's minimized. But regardless, you're going to be doing a lot of administrative or some level of administrative work to earn $1,500, let's say, okay? I had a student last year who was representing Higher Power for me at her campus. And I sent her a check for, I believe it was $10,000. Yeah, I sent her a check for $10,000 for the work that she did for me. And she didn't have to do a single piece of administrative work. She didn't have to arrange meetings for me or reserve conference rooms. All she did was talk to her friends about the process she went through and how she found a job. That was it. So she spread the word about Higher Power and our offer first process, our offer first approach. And she got other individuals to reach out to me and they told me her name. They filled out her name in the profile. I attached her name to their profile. And when I found them a job, she earned $1,000 for every single one. She sent me at least 15 names. I know we landed 10 of them. So she ended up getting $10,000. All right. So if anybody's interested in that, you've got my email address. Please feel free to shoot me a message. And what I plan on doing is at some point this year, I'll set a meeting with all of those folks that wanted to participate in this, and we'll talk about the strategy on how to do it. But again, you all are in a perfect environment to make a ton of money with a program like that, right? Because all of your friends and all of your colleagues right there in school are going to be looking for work, all right? So not all of them are on this webinar, obviously, so you guys are getting a head start. If that is enticing to you, please feel free to reach out, let me know, and I'll be happy to get you started, all right? So, closing remarks, if you'd like to try this offer first approach and become a Higher Power candidate, just go to my website. It's higherpower.com, H-I-R-E, play on words, H-I-R-E power.com. Along the top navigation bar, you'll see a link that says profile. Click on that link. Then you'll see candidate and employer profile. Click on the candidate one, fill that out. And trust me, I know when I ask people to fill things out, I can just feel the eyes rolling into the back of their head like, oh, I do not want to fill out anything. I promise you folks, this thing, I designed it myself. It is fast. It'll take you less than 5 minutes, okay? You're gonna answer some basic questions, attach your resume, done, all right? So if, again, if an employer contacts you directly, all right, and you think it's going to be a good opportunity, you can feel free to tell them, hey, you know what, reach out to Paul Diaz at Higher Power. You can engage with me through there, right? So that's your way of saying, hey, you know what, I want to go through the offer first process. And these employers, they'll reach out to me. I'll have them fill out the employer profile, and then I will handle all of that work for you, okay? And then I will come back to you with that offer, all right? So next point is, over the next few months, I'm going to be talking more about the offer first process, okay? I will be talking about questions that you need to ask about non-competes. That's another little pet peeve of mine, is these non-competes, okay? Now, again, that is going to be a major industry shift, all right? But I'm up for the challenge, okay? The thing is that I need veterinarians to support me on it to make this happen. And when I start talking about those non-competes in these future webinars, you'll understand what I mean. I'm also going to talk about how to evaluate some corporate mentorship programs, okay? Because I'm seeing a lot of this awesome advertising for these structured, I'm doing those air quotes with my fingers right now, those structured mentorship programs, all right? There are questions, there are things that you need to ask about those mentorship programs, okay, so that you can do your due diligence and vet them very well, okay? The reason I'm bringing this up is because I have a lot of candidates who I'm trying to place now who have been through those structured mentorship programs and are telling me that it's not all that it's cracked up to be, all right? And the difference, one of the differences you guys need to understand is that when you hear this term structured, they're gonna say, oh, we tailor it to your needs. So we're gonna figure out what areas you're weakest in, which areas you're strong in, and we'll design this program around you. What it really turns out to be is you're doing relief shifts in different hospitals for them, all right? You're gonna meet with a mentor who's got a checklist. He or she's gonna put some checks in a box, make sure that they covered everything with you, and you're not gonna see that person again, all right? On the private practice side of the house though, a lot of my clients are private practice. The difference there is that you're going to be working directly with the owner, okay? The owner or partners of that practice. These people are vested in your success. Your success means their success. So although you may not be seeing all the great advertising like the corporate players from the private side of the house, what I want you to understand though, is that on the private side of the house, that mentorship, it isn't a structured program that in the typical sense where it's going to start one day and end one day, all right? Mentorship at a private practice hospital is going to last your entire career for as long as you stay there, because these folks want you to get better every day, all right? Like I said, your success is theirs. So there's a big difference in how those play out. In future webinars, I'm going to talk to you about questions you need to be asking to evaluate those programs. And I'm also going to give away a lot of the other secrets that the corporate employers and the corporate recruiters don't want you to know, all right? This is going to be kind of like that a TV show where the magician was giving away all the other magician's secrets. Turned out to not be a good situation for him, but I'll be all right. I'm not worried. But the thing is that, again, my focus now is advocating for talent, all right? In my eyes, you know, veterinarians are the tip of the spear, okay? If anybody listening right now knows me personally, you know my dog Stella, you know that there is absolutely nothing in this world I won't do for her. And those of you, veterinarians, technicians who are there to care for her, you guys are number one in my book. So that is why I shifted from being a recruiter or from having a team of recruiters to talent advocates, all right? And some of you may be wondering, hey, you know what? These hospitals are your clients too. So how does that work, right? And if anybody is thinking that, I'll just go ahead and answer it right now. I am extremely, and my team, we are very clear and candid, and it's even written on my website, that my employer clients hire us to find them the talent. Okay, so they hire us to find people like you. Once I find that talent, I tell my employer clients, and they all understand this, that once I find the talent, I shift to representing the interests of my candidate, of that talent, okay? So my job for them is to find the candidate. Once I do, I represent the interests of the candidate, not the interest of the hospital. And why is that? Because the hospital has enough people looking out for their best interests. They've got their practice owners, they have their partners, they have their practice admins, they have their other doctors. Everybody on that team is looking out for the best interests of that hospital. Who's looking out for your best interest? Ask yourself that the next time you engage a recruiter directly, you engage an employer directly. Most people generally don't buy homes without the support of a realtor. You wouldn't walk into a courtroom without the help of a lawyer, all right? Those are major life decisions, and so is taking a new job, all right? But who's looking out for your best interest in the job search? Nobody. There really isn't anybody. It's all on you. Okay? The companies, the employers, they've got tons of people. You've got yourself. That is it. Not anymore, though. That's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm trying to change. I will represent your interests as best I possibly can, and I'm confident that you're not going to find anybody else out there that can do it better than me. All right? So, folks, if there's anything else, any other job-related type information or webinars you'd like to hear from me, please send those topic ideas and those topic suggestions to Jessica. You can see the email address there, jessica.davis@fearfreepets.com. I need these ideas from you, right? So that kind of keeps these things fresh, and it'll ensure that I'm putting out information that you all want to hear, okay? So having said that, I believe it is a wrap. So Jessica, do we have any questions so far?
How quickly does it take you to find the average candidate a job?
Oh, none of you are average. So, but to answer that question, it really depends on the region, right? So remember how I said that flexibility is important, right? So if I had somebody who's very, very flexible in their location preferences, I can find a job less than 30 days easily, all right? Some folks who want a very, very specific location, maybe just one city, that can be challenging, all right? So average is about 30 days, all right? So that, you know, if we're asking averages, I would have to say about 30 days. But the beauty of this process, though, is that once that starts, once I find the job and we get that offer in place for you, once you approve that offer, it averages the process from there until that final offer is signed, averages about only 2 weeks. Okay, so my clients move very quickly, all right? And that's the other thing about recruiting in this environment is we all, me, the employer, and the candidate, we all have to be able to move quickly, all right? So about 30 days on average. Again, depending, it's very heavily dependent on the region of the country that you're looking for. But then again, once we find that, it moves very fast. Oh, we got another one.
All right, thank you. The next question is, what year during school should we start looking into programs like Higher Power? For that student rep position, are you looking for fourth years whose classmates are more actively job seeking?
Great question, Stephen. So I recommend you start looking, well, when you say looking for programs like Higher Power, like if you're looking for me to start finding you the job, I would do it at the beginning of your final year, okay? Any earlier than that would be a little premature at this stage, but I do believe in the next few years, in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to start seeing employers reaching out to third-year students for offers. I think it's going to get to that. It's going to get to that point where we're dipping into the pool that early because, again, the supply is so limited. All right, the demand is really high, the supply is low. So in those types of situations, we start doing things differently, and it may mean that, hey, let's start making offers to third years so that we can lock that class down, all right? So for now, I would say the beginning of your fourth, but again, if if somebody reached out to me and they were a third year student or sooner, what happens is we just stay engaged, okay? You stay in my database, we stay in touch every so often, and I start figuring out where you want to be. We have those types of discussions. I can help you with, resume work. I can help you preparing for interviews, whatever the case is. All right. But the end result is that I like to start that. I prefer to have that relationship started as early as possible. All right. Now, in terms of the student reps, doesn't necessarily have to be fourth years. Okay. If you're earlier than that, all it means is that you're going to make even more money. Okay. So yeah, there's no year requirement for student reps, so if you're a first year student listening to this and you want to sign up for this, then you'll have a solid 4 years of earning that money. But you do have to remember, though, it's paid when the person takes that job. So we want you to focus on those folks that are going to be those fourth years that are going to be entering the workforce sooner rather than later. But if you recommended a third year, then we just bank it. Okay, we bank it for as long as we have to, and you end up getting all that money at the, once those folks sign their contracts. So it's a good way to kind of just have that money essentially in a bank.
All right, if there are no other questions, we will wrap up. Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar tonight. You'll be able to find a recording of this webinar on fearfreepets.com within the next week.